Well, welcome everyone to American Majority's workshop for this afternoon. I hope you guys have all been having a great time at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. It's always a treat to join with our fellow patriots out there and join with all of you guys to talk about grassroots organizing. Sometimes we do campaign training workshops as well. I'm going to give people a few minutes to join here as we are right at the start time, but just give some people some time to join in. So I'm just going to do some kind of introductory remarks before I actually jump into the meat of the program. So I'll tell you a little bit about American Majority. Today I want to talk really about the ground game and helping to get really organized for victory, and I encourage you to ask questions along the way. Some of them I will try to answer. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can along the way. Otherwise, we can tackle those questions all at the end, and also share my email at the end. So if you have any questions or watching this later or missed something, feel free to send me a email and I'd be happy to answer that to the best of my knowledge and help. So we're going to talk about a few different things, and we are less than 40 days away from a big presidential election. There are numerous local offices for election that are going to be coming up in the next year, 2021. So I am sitting here in Wisconsin where I live. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I'll talk about that a little bit in a second, but there are all sorts of races that are on the horizon. I know there's a local group here in Wisconsin. They had a county board try to give powers to an unelected bureaucrat, a county health official, and really disliked what the county board had tried to do. But unfortunately for them, those county board supervisors who were trying to ram through these new powers to a unelected bureaucrat, those county board supervisors are not up for election until 2022. So even they're trying to think about, how do we organize campaigns? How do we find people to run for local office in 2022? And so here we are in end of 2020. There's races in 2021, certainly obviously big races happening this year, very significant races this year up and down the ballot. But also people may be looking to the future of thinking of running for office, for local office down the road. I want to also talk, maybe people are thinking about running for state level office in 2022. Whatever it may be, this training ideally is going to give you some of the basics of what you would need to do to put together a winning campaign plan, a winning organizing plan to really accomplish your political goals. So we are going to go through a few different slides on this. I just want to give you a background, a little bit about American Majority to kind of kick things off. American Majority is the nation's leading conservative training organization. We're a 501c3. So we are continually training, organizing, mobilizing, and equipping the next generation of conservative grassroots leaders. We really think that our country needs a new generation of leaders to step forward in their communities, run for state and local office, and improve the communities around them and improve the states around them. It's so easy just to focus on the big races that are happening for Senate or for president. And there's a lot more opportunity, I would say, to have a big impact for one individual or a small group of individuals. Certainly you can have an impact in a state level race, in an electoral college math for a state. But by and large, a lot of the things, the bigger impact you may be able to have is on getting someone local elected to maybe state legislature, or getting someone better, flipping a local board. And American Majority, we really believe that meaningful, lasting political change starts not in Washington, D.C., but really at the state and local levels, where most of the actual government decisions and spending occurs. And when you look at it, the numbers of where money is spent to pay for the roads, to pay for the public safety. A lot of people are talking about defund the police. The left is all on that big narrative and trying to do all these different things. Well, Washington, D.C. actually has very little to do with police funding at the local level. So a lot of these discussions are Minneapolis, their city council, right, or the common council, and here in Wisconsin, I mentioned, but it's Milwaukee. The mayor of Milwaukee has a proposal, and that has to be voted on by the Milwaukee Common Council. Similar things for Philadelphia, Harrisburg, et cetera, whatever they're considering doing in Pennsylvania or in other states where you may be living. That's where defund the police is going to be discussed. That's where it's going to be proposed. That's ultimately where it's going to be enacted. And as much as someone running for president may want to be able to wave a magic wand and change that, it's still is fundamentally going to be a local controlled activity. Certainly is room for federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, but it is a local activity. So we see these battles happening. We see the battle over what to do on the pandemic, and we see local tyrants stepping forward and really trampling constitutional rights all across the country in local communities. So that's what I really want to talk about today is how do we stop a lot of these things from happening? How do we get better people elected locally? How do we get organized at the local level? And American Majority is here to be a resource. So beyond this, many of you may have been taking part in workshops that we've done in the past or attended in-person trainings. We have a host of online courses, webinars that you can take part in if you want to learn more about. The nice thing really about the online courses is you can, if you think about running for office, and I've had numerous friends and others that I've referred to these things. There's a great course on should I run for office? There's other courses on other different aspects of that. I know campaign managers, they're trying to get up to speed on what they need to be doing on the campaign trail for their candidate for Congress or whatever office it may be. There's an online course that can be helpful. And of course, we always want to connect with you guys online. Twitter, we still use a fair amount. My Twitter username is @MattBatzel. And AM Train is a hashtag that we use. American Majority's main national account is AM_national. There's a lot of us state accounts and different things as well that you could find. And then, of course, our website is AmericanMajority.org. So we'd love to stay in touch with you guys and keep the discussion going. So a little bit about me and my background. I grew up in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania, up in northeastern Pennsylvania, about 5 miles from the New York border. Grew up along the Susquehanna River, fishing for smallmouth bass, and every summer that I could along that river and catching quite a few. Had a lot of fun growing up in Pennsylvania. Eventually went to Washington, D.C., and then ended up going to law school in University of Kansas School of Law, and then married a gal from Wisconsin. We moved here in 2010. But I go all over the country to train individuals in how to accomplish their political goals. Always love the chance to be able to train and talk with folks from my home state. My parents still live out there. My brother and his family are out there as well. So I love to be able to interact with folks from Pennsylvania and talk to them about how do we do these things together? How can we be working together, collaborating? And really what American Majority tries to do is share information, share the latest tactics on campaigns and on organizing that is working. There certainly are tried and true basic tactics that are always going to be used, but how do you tackle things in a pandemic? You know, what did people do here in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin, to stop that local health officer from gaining more power to be able to trample constitutional rights? You know, can we talk about and share that information with people that are fighting the same battle? Maybe it's a different level office, maybe it's a different type of person trying to do things, but the same similar core principles that can be shared that worked here. We want to be able to share that information and share what has worked, and frankly, what hasn't worked, right? If there are things that are ineffective, that are a waste of resources and time, you guys probably want to know those things as well. And so we want to be sharing those things. I also, just a little bit more about me, went to Franklin and Marshall College. So we recently saw Lancaster in the national news for, unfortunately, the shooting that happened there. But there's all these different sorts of ties and different things we're seeing around the country. There was a shooting in Kenosha, and there's different things that happen. There's all different sorts of responses that have taken place, and we can share, reaction to those things, what has happened, what's taking place, and ultimately how do we be successful in accomplishing our policy objectives, accomplishing success in elections, which is going to mean winning elections. It's oftentimes not just one seat, but it's winning enough seats to actually have a governing body, control of a governing body, to be able to pass the legislation, pass good policy. So the grassroots organizing, really want to talk about this afternoon. Here are kind of the key themes. Now is the time to organize. You may be thinking about a race in the future, 2022, 2021. Obviously, there's a lot of important races here in 2020. But so if you're trying to get organized, you're trying to make a difference in the presidential race or a congressional race or even a state legislative race, someone's on the ballot, maybe there's another race that you're working on at the local level, regardless of when that is, get organized right now if you are not, right? So now is the time to organize. Do not wait. Do not put that off. whether you're running for office or helping on a campaign, you need to prepare now. You need to do the homework. You need to put together a plan. And I always encourage folks, put together a written plan for how you are going to win. For campaigns, you got to have that written down. That's something you can share and go back to. There are all different sorts of things, right? Right now at the national level, the federal level, the Supreme Court nomination that we're expecting to happen today, that all of a sudden is dominating that campaign. Now, that certainly is not what some of the candidates that are running for different levels of office, for Senate or other things, maybe want to talk about. For others, is maybe it is a gift. But how do you continue to get your message out if the airwaves are going to be dominated, if the media is all they're going to be talking about is the nomination process and what's happening and all the political drama that's going to happen there? There's going to be there's going to be so much attention focused on that. How do you still get your message out to the voters? I was on a call the other day with some folks making some plans for this election cycle. And that was a big thing, that there's going to be a major airwave cover and domination for especially the presidential level and discussion of what the Senate is doing. And so it's harder for local candidates to get their message out. That could be happening now if you're focused on that. In the future, the same sort of thing can happen, and you need to plan to get your message out, plan to be able to use the airwaves if possible. So what we have to do now are these four things. This is kind of the quick summary that I'm going to go through in more detail here, but winning campaigns in tough years, and we've seen tough campaign election cycles, and 2020 is a unique challenge all to its own. But I want to share with you some great lessons that we've learned. Number one, pay attention to the electorate, year, and tone, right? So presidential year, if you're running down ballot in a presidential year, of course, and more people are voting, and more people who probably don't know much about local level races or state level races. Pay attention to the year. Where are we at? What is the discussion about? Pay attention to the tone. And I'd say, this fits in with the coronavirus pandemic. Pay attention even to the numbers there. I may cover some things today that work well here in Wisconsin, may work well in rural and suburban areas, but if you're running an urban campaign, may not work as well. And you need to think about what is the right tone, what is the right posture to have in those particular circumstances. Number two, the ground game begins now. It's been happening, obviously, for the 2020 presidential level, congressional level races, and state legislative races for a while, and any other statewide races that are taking place. But it's not too late to get involved in that. And if someone was, coming up to me and say, hey, what can I do to make a difference? I want to help so-and-so get elected. The most effective thing you can do is to volunteer to go knock doors, make an impact there. Also talk to your friends and family, your network of people that live in those districts, live in those battleground states, and talk to them about what's at stake and why you're supporting certain candidates, why they should do it as well. That's important, that you have real conversations with real people. In an ideal world, people that you already know and have influence with, that can make a big difference. Now, at the presidential level, so many people have their minds made up. It's hard to do that. So how do you find those people who maybe don't have their minds made up? And that's where that door knocking of people that are targeted to swing voters, independents, people that may not vote because of what's going on, because they maybe they view all political parties the same or are sick of politics, whatever it may be. You need to figure out a way to motivate them to vote. And those are things you can do best by door-to-door communications, best by people that you have a personal relationship with. Number three, build strategic alliances and use them well. Find the right groups to work with and build those alliances, strengthen those, help those. Don't just all be about yourself, but helping the larger groups that can be involved with you and can partner with you is very important. And number four, engage in the battle online. As we see the media just completely in the tank for one side and completely forgetting, I'd say, the rules of journalism in so many ways. It's so important that we provide information as directly to other people as possible. And the tools that we have online are at our disposal. Increasingly, it's challenging with the censorship, no doubt that is happening, but there are still ways to use the tools that are out there. Maybe it's looking at other tools or alternative tools where we can help to get information out. So let's dive into this. I do want to go back to 2018 just a little bit to talk a little about that. We won't spend much time on this, but we looked at what happened and the resistance, as you know, that popped up after the 2016 presidential election. They really used 2018 as a springboard. So they mobilized and organized and won across the country in numerous races. And what they did is, a lot of times, all politics is local, is the Tip O'Neill campaign narrative or lesson. But what they did is they nationalized the state and local level elections and ran really based upon the kind of the passion that was there, or the anger that was there. And make no mistake, right? What we're seeing in 2020 is the fear mongering I'd say at unprecedented levels on the left. They are trying to use hate as a motivating factor as much as they can, and it's not just for the top level races; it's the other ones on down, calling everyone all sorts of names in the book that is standing for any sort of conservative principles. They'll say you just have to be prepared for those attacks to come, but they're using those things and winning campaigns in 2018. What they did largely is they leveraged the national issues and they applied that passion into congressional, state, and local races. And they were able to get more people out to vote than typically vote in a midterm election. So that's the successful narrative they had. Here in Wisconsin, we saw that while the right had more money, the left was better organized, motivated, and mobilized. And so the right outspent the left 3-1 in Wisconsin, but yet Tony Evers, who is the governor now, defeated former Governor Scott Walker by less than 30,000 votes. And we look specifically, well, who were the voters that propelled that? Why did they do that? Well, it was young voters largely. Tom Steyer, Next Gen, had a group called Next Gen. They were doing all sorts of activity on college campuses. I'm not going to run through all the stats now, but you guys can see them on your screen. They had people talking face to face. Now, there's some challenges to do these things now. They also used some different types of strategies to get people focused and involved and bought into their overall narrative. So they used local elections and special elections to influence the outcome and then improve and test their operations. And they also use current events to rally target demographics. Cute pigs, maybe that works in Wisconsin, maybe not as much in other states, but they did things to try to catch people's attention and draw them in and then have a conversation with them about why it was important to vote, why it's important to volunteer and make a difference in the election. And so, okay, that was 2018. That was pre-coronavirus. You're thinking, now what? We had COVID-19 hit this year, and unfortunately, that the traditional campaign narratives and how you would do events, even in person, have changed. And no doubt, you have to adapt your plan to the circumstance that's in front of you, and you have to think about more virtual ways to do things. Right here, we are on a Zoom. I'd love to be in. I forget the name of the room, but at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference, right, and in person with you guys, and look forward to doing that next year, hopefully. But you have to think about ways that you can do a lot of things to interact with people, right? So our sister organization, American Majority Action, which is out knocking thousands of doors across the country today in battleground states, sometimes we're doing Zoom meetings to show people how to create walk lists, right? Instead of showing them in person to person, it's a lot easier to use some of these tools now. And so you have to think about what are some of the tools that we can use to help people to be effective, to equip the volunteers to be effective. We still want to do some of the same basic things. And what we're seeing is at the federal level, certainly, is one political party and one political campaign, is choosing to not door knock at all. And we'll talk about that and what the impacts of that. But by and large, you can still use the same tactics, but you want to use the tools that are out there. So I mentioned before, the ground game begins now, right? Regardless of whether you're focused on the future election or the 2020 election, you need to be out talking to real people. What is the ground game? Put simply, it's the efforts of a committed group of individuals using their time and their relationships to impact an election through direct voter contact. So this isn't talking about putting up a billboard. This is talking about direct voter contact where you can have a conversation. The ground game is one of the most important elements for a campaign team at large. And by and large, when you look at elections, the team that aggressively recruits volunteers, mobilizes the right voters, and manages their technology most effectively almost always wins. Now, the left is hoping that means peer-to-peer texting has replaced door-to-door communications, and that is going to be more effective and that live phone calls are more effective. I saw an article the other day where the left said that more people are answering their phones and having conversations on their phones than they have in prior cycles. I don't believe that for a second, but it makes them feel a little bit better about not doing doors when they do things like that. So we talk about ground game. Let's talk about people, process, and strategy. Those are really the tools that you have at your disposal to win in an election. So first of all, you have to have people. You need to get as many volunteers as possible for a campaign, whether it's trying to stop a referendum, and whether it's trying to stop a local county health ordinance or a statewide mask mandate. You need to make sure that you have enough people mobilized to be involved. So let's talk about where do you find volunteers, how to manage them, And then importantly, how to keep them coming back. You don't want them to show up for one thing and then just fizzle out. And I would say, 2020 is showing that there are a new crop of people that are fed up with government overreach and telling them what they can't do, what they have to wear when they come into a store, or if they're outside, or if they're at a restaurant. All of the rules that the left has thrown out there in this to respond to this pandemic is firing up, is motivating a whole new subset of people that have not been politically active before. Now, it's not necessarily on par with necessarily the 2010 Tea Party, but there are a number of new people that want to make a difference that have never been involved in political organizing, had never really been involved in political campaigns or in trying to stop bad policy. So if you have been involved and you have some experience and have learned lessons, you need to share them with people that are trying to get involved in and that are showing up at maybe a protest or a rally, a peaceful protest that is, right? So volunteers are the lifeblood of every campaign. With so many campaigns out there, how do you find the committed people to invest in yours? And the first step really is to have a good way to collect information. You have to be able to know if there's a rally, you have to have a sign-in sheet, right? You have to go around and have volunteers that are willing to stand out there, willing to have kind of awkward conversations. Perhaps people maybe don't want to sign something, but get as many of the names and emails as possible. If there's a way to do online registration to capture, the most important things probably are cell phone information, cell phone number, and email, and then after that, probably address and other things. But you need to have that name as well. But you want to be able to follow up with those people and find the best way to follow up with them. So you have to be able to capture that information. And it starts really when you're trying to think of who could be helpful on your campaign, whether you're running for office yourself or trying to stop or organize something. Start with people you know, right? Friends and family first. Your appeals to those are going to be the most aggressive because you already have that prior relationship. Now, you may think, oh, they're never going to help me because of this or that, but you'd be surprised, right? Just ask. And campaigns, you're going to be asking people to help you in numerous ways, from giving money to your campaign if you're running for office, or helping to volunteer, helping to show up early to a parade. If they let us do those, I don't know if they're doing parades. There seems like there weren't that many this summer. I know we had some here in Wisconsin, but whatever you can do to make a difference, using for those things, people are more likely that you already know to come and help in those ways. So they're gonna be more interested in helping you than you would think. Build off of that personal relationship. And they're probably not going to care as much about all of your beliefs. Obviously, there's going to be some people that disagree with you so strongly, they won't do it. That's fine, move on. There's going to be numerous people that will help you because of your political beliefs, and you want to leverage those as effectively as possible. Now, when I think of the kind of the most successful grassroots volunteers-driven campaigns, and certainly this was top-down run as well, but to get new people involved and really seeing the change in numbers in terms of turnout of voters, I think of the 2012 presidential election and what President Obama was able to do. And so one of the nice things is after they won that 2012 election, they put out basically a guide to what they did in that election to get more people to turn out to vote. So I was shocked. The city of Milwaukee, and similar with city of Philadelphia numbers, and I'm more familiar with Milwaukee's numbers, just how many more votes they were able to get in the urban areas in Wisconsin, and largely in Milwaukee, also in city of Madison, than they had gotten in 2008. So they were able to find a whole new subset of voters. And how did they do that? Well, they used volunteers very, very effectively. And so one of the things, they're talking about how they found volunteers, and they put out a pie chart of where they got their volunteers from. So this is from 2012. This was from OFA saying how they got their success in that 2012 election. And so it used to be Obama for America, became Organizing for America. Anyway, so they put together this massive operation, had hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal, but they still needed people to volunteer their time. They couldn't pay everyone to help in those ways. So this chart shows, about 1/4 contacted the campaign organically. That's probably sparked by seeing a debate, watching this or that, or seeing a policy fight, whatever it may be. 18% donated to the campaign. So that tells us the people that actually gave money then turned into volunteers. They're not just writing checks to the campaign. They actually people that are going and probably knocking doors, making phone calls. They're vested in the campaign. They want to see it be successful. They're not simply just going to sit back and watch from their ivory tower. They got involved, right? Email was a big part, 14%. Contacted by a campaign staffer, 11%. Blue, they're contacted by a volunteer. That's another 9%. So that's 20% right there. So 1/5 of them basically volunteered because they were asked by someone. And so my lesson from this is you should be having people asking their friends, once you find people that are volunteering, wanting to come in and be involved, have them ask their friends, have them bring their friends. This is something that works tremendously well. They can do something that actually has a social aspect to it because they're doing it with their friends. They're going to have more fun doing things with people they already know and they enjoy being with than if they were doing it just by themselves and meeting people for the first time. So use those friendships as best you can. So it's their close relationships, right? It's the close relationships you have, friends and family, and that's asking those key people that are involved at the ground level who they know and bringing those people in as well, even if they don't know you as well. After closest contacts, then your church, your synagogue, workplace, maybe alumni from your university, neighbors, neighborhood associations, groups or clubs at the local level, from Rotary to Kiwanis or American Legion, all these different things that you may be involved with. Think about, who do you know and who shares your values and who could be helpful to your efforts. And then also other political efforts, past lists. Maybe there's a rally, there's a gold mine of information of people who are attending the rallies. Are those being used well? What happens to those lists after the 2020 election cycle? If you want to run for office in the future, it'd be very helpful to know who from your area, who from your district has attended those things and be able to have a personal outreach to those individuals. Number two then is active networking, right? So it's friends and family first, then active networking. Members of the campaign must be present throughout the community at local events, actively meeting potential new volunteers. And a key part of this, be visible, be intentional, create relationships, and be looking for new people that can help you. Then there's passive recruitment. Hopefully this is able to do this more and more as things improve on the health front, right? Whether you're going to a place where you can have a table or doing more and more rallies, more assemblies, conferences. A lot of these have been put on hold. Some are certainly still happening, but you can also plan now for when you can do this in earnest, where you can maximize this. So again, you're getting all these people on a list. What you do with your list then will determine your volunteer recruitment success. Once you have their information, you then go to tier 2, which is following up with them and getting them to buy in to be involved with your campaign. Everyone should receive a personalized follow-up, and ideally it's quickly, right? It's within 48 hours and email may be a good way to do it. Others may say a better way to do it is with text or with a phone call, and you want to be able to follow up with them quickly and promptly. So, and good campaigns are going to look to see what is the best way to contact them, where did they respond to us, and doing that. Maybe it's Facebook Messenger. There's so many people that message me in that way. Twitter direct message, Instagram messages, all these different things. People may send a communication that way. You want to be able to use and respond to all of those as effectively as you can. So when you are following up, call the person with a direct appeal to further action. You need to have that call to action for how they can be helpful, how they can make a difference, knowing when there are volunteer opportunities, when they can help in an event, invitation to a fundraiser. All of these things are good examples of ways to get them directly involved. Here in Sheboygan, I mentioned the health fight that we've been having and that the grassroots really were successful in doing. They were able to get a large group of people to be key volunteers, but they had a group of leaders that did most of the work early on. Initially, they put together a big rally to show at the outside the courthouse to show a big, strong opposition, grassroots opposition to the proposal. And they did this right before there was a meeting. Of course, with all the social distancing things, the meeting was there, but they only, I think, allowed 8 or 10 people into the building to testify, and everyone was spread out. And no problem with necessarily having them spread out, but limiting the public input was something that I think sparked a motivation to put together a successful rally. And events like that, people see that there are that many people involved and wanting to stop something are going to get more people motivated to help. And right, so giving them something even there, right? Hey, it's great that you showed up at a rally, but we need you to do this. We need some people that are going to run for office. We need people that are going to write a letter to the editor. We need people that will help manage the social media pages as we go forward. You want to get people to sign up to those things. And after they attend a rally, a follow-up phone call asking them or solidifying that thing is going to be helpful. Always have that call to action so they can make a difference. So then tier 2 is you activate them. Always have that list of tasks, events, which the volunteer can be utilized on. If you've gotten to this point, the person is bought in, and you should focus on training, activating them, immediately so that they can be successful in helping. Then you have to manage those volunteers well. Always connect your activated volunteers to the big picture of what they're doing and why that makes a difference. When I train door knockers, I always want to explain to them why door knocking is the most effective way to win elections. And so I, explain that, right? You are the cutting edge of this campaign, and you have to understand that there's a big impact if you are able to do as many quality conversations as possible. So make sure that they understand the importance of what they are doing and how that ties into the big picture. Give them proper training and preparation. Each volunteer should be properly trained, and that just means giving them an overview of what to expect, helping them to know what they can do, what they can't do, prepare them for that, maybe do some mock interactions of what it looks like, and especially with phone calls, knocking doors. I remember back in the 2004 election cycle, I was making phone calls for Bush Cheney campaign, and I was a college student. We got a bunch of people together, and there were times where we weren't trained at all. I think the first time I went out door knocking, no one told us what to do at all, and we did okay, but we probably wasted a lot of time. The second time, there was a really good trainer who gave us an overview. We were making phone calls that time, and they did a very good job of preparing us, of explaining where everything was, explaining what to do if there was any sort of issue, and we were much more effective with having received that training than we were the first time we came out and volunteered. Now, we had learned more ourselves, I think, and we're able to figure some things out, but it is always important that you give people the proper organization and proper training, prepare them for what they're going to see. Volunteers should be prepped on exactly what to expect, as well as the best practices. And think about, can you train them online? Prepare them for that ahead of time, especially with all what's going on right now. Always think about volunteer safety, right? And some people will volunteer if you're doing this, right? Think about appearance, preparing them for what they should do, approachability and conduct, how to smile, how to speak. If you're using an app, how to do that, how to use the data, how to enter data, how to look at what available information is out there. You don't need to be a finely polished pro. Locality and therefore authenticity matters more in a lot of these things, right? Campaigns are always looking for people that can talk to their neighbors. They don't want to necessarily have people, shipped in from out of state to do different things. They want people that are local, that know the traditions, the norms, the local culture. That's always going to be helpful. The biggest mistake, though, with volunteer recruitment, and the worst thing you can do, is to squander a volunteer because you don't have a task for them. If someone shows up, they want to make phone calls, they want to go door knocking, and you're not there on time, or you don't have a walk list for them and you tell them just wait. And I know there's all sorts of things going on in the campaign. It's a challenge to keep on top of all those, but you want to make sure that you do not squander that opportunity by not having helpful information for them. They will never come back if that happens. So avoid that mistake. And then make sure you appreciate all the people that are helping you as volunteers. Acknowledge, thank them, have prizes, give rewards out, things that show that they are valued assets and that you are grateful for all that they are doing. Maybe it's just calling them with a phone call. Maybe it's highlighting them on social media or volunteer work. Maybe it's giving out awards. Political parties seem to be very good at giving out very important sounding awards that make people feel, appreciated for those things. It could just be as simple as, calling them out and highlighting them with a meme on social media or something. So volunteers are going to be so essential to any sort of grassroots activity that you do. You can't do it all yourself. You need to have a team around you. Another big piece of this puzzle is having a coalition, finding the like-minded groups and causes to contribute and volunteer with you. Now, we see the left is very adept at this, right? If they're trying to stop a confirmation, like maybe we'll see with the judicial nomination later today, there's going to be 35 or more left-wing groups as part of a coalition quickly activated together to make it sound like there's so many people coming together. Whereas groups on the right tend to do things kind of more in silos. They'll do their own hashtag campaign or their own organizing thing. And so we need to think about ways that we can work with other groups that can be similar to us. And really, when you're thinking about this, are they the right fit? Do they have a good reputation? Do they have the same or similar goals? And will their involvement actually add more value? And a lot of times it will. Sometimes it won't. And we can look at those things. We can be critical of various different things, but look for the opportunities to partner with groups that can be helpful. Surveys are another big effective ground game tool to use to give you valuable information about what motivates voting decisions And so you can be asking all different sorts of questions. I'm showing some screenshots from voter gravity that we've used in prior cycles to gather information. Any campaign cycle, my first question, and I try to talk to as many of the people as possible and understand what issue is motivating them. So what we're seeing here in Wisconsin, especially Milwaukee suburbs, is the economy is the number one issue. COVID-19 is the second or third issue. Healthcare, education, other issues like that are kind of further down the list from where they normally would be, but the big two are really the economy and COVID-19 response. So figuring out how to talk to folks about that. We go further out state and more rural areas. The economy becomes even a more dominant issue, and COVID-19 goes down a little bit. And so it's understanding how to motivate, even at the individual level, the individual voters, and micro target to them a message to them. So you need to get voter data. You need to have those conversations. Surveys can be helpful. Polling data can be helpful as well if you can look at that and you know how to understand that. But for local campaigns, for instance, you're not going to be doing polling, right? You may see a statewide poll from Franklin Marshall Polling or a statewide polling firm or something, but you want to make sure that you understand and look at information about as much data as you can about the district and about the voters in that particular election cycle. Remember, pay attention to the electorate, year, and tone. Very important to do that. So use that data to focus on your voter outreach. Now let's talk about IDing voters, persuasion, get out the vote. The three stages for targeting voters. First one is IDing, and it's understanding what's motivating those voters. You're having quick interactions. This is to the largest voting universe, and the candidate policies are pushing them to vote for one candidate is not the primary conversation. Where we're at in the 2020 cycle is we should well be beyond IDing voters, or should be in the tail end of IDing voters as we transition, as many people have opportunity to vote now in person. Absentee ballots were sent out in Wisconsin, for instance, September 17th, and in several other states. I don't know all the different states' information. So stage two then is persuasion. After you identified your target voters, you will persuade them to support your candidate and follow up with a contact and survey. You're following up on that important issue. So if you know the number one issue is the economy, you're going out and talking to voters that care about the economy, about that issue. If it's some other issue, you're talking to them about that. Why your candidate then is the most important, or it's important to elect them, why they're the best candidate for that, and ask them if they can support them. Can I count on you to support our candidate in this election for this reason, right? Those things can be very helpful. Then get out the vote is the final stage of the campaign. By this time, you've identified your supporters and you are making the final push to get them out to the polls. The ask at the door should be simple, short, and direct. And again, you're focusing here on the people that you think are already with you, or that you have already identified being with you. You also need to think about, should you be engaging infrequent voters? Now, in a midterm election, there's more opportunity to do this. And it's also a risky business. There's a calculation you have to make about whether it's worth your time or not. And you can leverage national issues. And that's what the left in 2018 did, is they leveraged those national issues to the other elections. And they put things like marijuana referendums. The other day, I was doing peer-to-peer texting, one of the tools that we're using here in Wisconsin in 2020 and in other states as well for our sister organization. And there was someone we asked about, what do you think of Governor Evers, Wisconsin's governor? And they said, I don't like him. I thought that he was going to legalize pot. And that was the message that the left used to motivate that person probably to vote in 2018 for Tony Evers. They have buyer's regret. They're not seeing any sort of action on that. There's no serious proposal to do that at this time, but it was literally a political tool that was used to create marijuana. Not in Wisconsin, they were non-binding advisory referendums at the county level that were passed by left-wing organizations to basically gin up the vote from that community to vote for various different offices that they wanted to win. And it was successful. So you can try to think about engaging those infrequent voters. There certainly are people that maybe have never voted before, and that what you got to do is you got to get them registered to vote, right? So from your PA online voter registration website, you can do this online. The deadline is upcoming, right? So October 19th is the last day to register before the November 3rd election. It's a similar time frame for future election cycles as well. But this is something that you should really be looking for opportunities to do. I know I saw some articles that talked about how the right did a good job or made some gains in terms of voter registration. And a lot of this is the left is not out on the doors. They're trying to do everything digitally, peer-to-peer texting, live phone calls, Facebook Messenger, different things like that, to try to make up for the lack of in-person door-to-door contacts. But it's really hard to follow through on voter registrations, different things like that, if you are not face-to-face with them. Left-wing groups like Rock the Vote is doing all different sorts of things to push out young people to register to vote. So just be aware of the tools that are out there that really are pushing the left. And it seems, a lot of their things, a lot of groups do things under the guise of being nonpartisan, even though they are only really targeting people that are going to vote one particular party. GOTV is Get Out the Vote. This is really the final stretch of a campaign. Historically, it was really the 72 hours prior to the election, but that really doesn't cut it anymore as more people are casting an absentee ballot. 2020 accelerated that with the COVID-19 pandemic, and so we're seeing so many people signing up for them. We're also seeing a different dynamic of people not trusting the absentee ballot process because of the mail challenges with the UPS and challenges with all different sorts of things that we are seeing in the news. See headline from Pennsylvania, saw a headline from Wisconsin, ballots found in the ditch, see ballots that were cast by military members. All different sorts of challenges there. And so almost every state allows you to then request an absentee ballot, get it, and then hand deliver it rather than trust the mail on the back end. But still, you need to think about there are a lot of people that are voting with an absentee ballot. Some states, again, mail everyone an absentee ballot. We're increasingly seeing those in the West, but there are opportunities to think about how do you use that? How do you do your Get Out the Vote operation if you have swing voters and independents that have requested absentee ballots? You personally may not want to use an absentee ballot, but there are a lot of individuals who are doing that. And when we talk about Get Out the Vote, we're really talking about live voter contacts at the door, on the phone, with intention of turning out your identified supporters. Peer-to-peer texting I throw in there as well. This does not include literature drops or putting up billboards or sign waving. You're actually talking to live voters, and is what we talk about by Get Out the Vote. Now, why do we talk about live and not just recorded messages or the billboard that's put up down my road, right? We're talking about what actually traditionally has worked time and time again in campaigns. So Gerber and Green are the political scientists that have put together even a book on what is effective in campaigns, and they look at the data. Empirical data shows that face-to-face canvassing raises turnout rates from approximately 44 to 53% in local elections, consistently across even bigger elections, presidential, midterm elections, statewide elections, door-to-door campaigning, block walking, whatever you want to call it. That makes an impact, raises the level of turnout certainly, but also persuades more people to vote for one campaign, because the reality is people are just inundated with ads. Most people are tuning out 99% of what they see with all the ads. Now, so much money is made by the ad companies, the ad agencies, the consultants in campaigns, and don't get me started on that. But having an opportunity to talk to someone about what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're considering voting based upon is a very valuable thing, and you do not want to miss that piece of it. Gerber and Green, they've done, again, numerous Get Out the Vote studies. They've analyzed other studies done by others as well. And this chart just shows the cost effectiveness of different campaign tactics, so GOT efforts, the effectiveness per contact. So one door knock for every 14 contacts is going to be the most effective way to change voter minds for door to door. And that costs, if you are paying someone, and this is, I think, $2016, $29 per vote, whereas live calls will be $38 per vote. And then all the other ones there do not have a consistent, proven ability to turn out the votes. Now, in some cases, it may be. If there's nothing else going on, a robocall in a spring election to turn out voters, to make them aware of a local issue with, let's say, schools being open or in person, all that, that could be the difference. But if there are all sorts of different ads out there, mailers, different things, those things completely lose their effectiveness because they are tuned out, so easy to ignore. So think about using the most effective tactics. Some social distancing, Get Out the Vote opportunities then would be using the live phone calls, peer-to-peer texting, relational organizing as well. We use Rumble Up as our peer-to-peer texting tool and have had a really good experience with them in 2020 and in having successful contacts, IDing voters and persuading them. You also want to then look at, okay, what can you do online, right? So you want to connect your social media with the Get Out the Vote. Researchers at MacArthur Research Network on Youth and Participatory Politics report that young people who are politically active online are twice as likely to vote than those who are not. And so you want to engage with people online, organize, engage, be innovative. 25% of social network users say they've gotten more involved in a political or social issue after reading about it on a social networking site. So use that as an opportunity. And what we're seeing increasingly is people are tuning out the news. I think I saw a recent poll, and it's from Wisconsin, but I imagine it's similar for Pennsylvania and other battleground states, that 2/3 of voters, people that are going to vote in 2020, not just adults or some other demographic, but 2/3 of likely voters in 2020 do not trust the national media to report on COVID-19. They just don't, right? So I imagine it's similar on other issues, but I think that's maybe a little bit more egregious. We're seeing that more and more people are not relying upon traditional news outlets for getting information. So this poll, what is your primary source of news? And I believe this is a Crooked Media poll from Wisconsin earlier this year. And 3% said print newspapers. So there are so few people that are still relying on print newspapers. Now, your local newspaper probably has an online website. They probably maybe double that or more people reading their website. They still are looked at and certainly are read by national reporters, and their stories can be highlighted and go viral across the nation, across the world. But for people, primary source of news, online news sites, 10 times or actually 11 times as great as print newspapers. That really was a surprise to me when I first saw that. It fits with what's been happening, but the difference in those two numbers was really eye-opening for me, and confirmation of, I think, a lot of the campaign tactics that we've been recommending at American Majority for some time, of using social media, using online websites as well, blogs, and submitting things to alternative sites as well. Local news, 10%. National network news shows still pretty good readership or watch numbers of viewers for that at 18%. Go down the list as well. And specifically, Snapchat's not really influencing many votes, but podcasts, keep an eye on those, are going up. I hear radio is less impactful as more and more people are been working from home that would traditionally listen to it on their drive in. And if they don't have that commute, they're not going to be tuning in the morning. Similar things for those maybe who listen to it on the job site if they're not at those job sites anymore for one reason or another, but probably because of lockdowns and the like. Radio is a little bit less impactful in 2020 than it was a year ago. So, and then Pew Research did some studies as well. More Americans get their news often from social media than print newspapers. Even television viewership's down, right? And you have to think about, even with television, broadcast versus cable versus the cord cutters like my family. We haven't had a cable subscription in probably over a dozen years. So, putting something up on broadcast TV ad is not going to be reaching my generation of voters as much as it will an older demographic. So you figure out who are you targeting with what ads and understand how to use that. So part of it is engaging in the battle online, calling out the fake news and media bias when you see it. So here's just a tweet that I had that helped to correct a story from a reporter back in 2018. She had done an article. There was a judge that struck down a Ohio Down syndrome abortion ban, basically banning abortions based upon if a child had Down syndrome based upon test, right? And the judge who struck that down had worked for Planned Parenthood, literally volunteered and worked for Planned Parenthood. And that was nowhere in the article. So I tweeted at the reporter and said, J.M. Borchard, why does your story about Judge Black striking down law banning abortions in Down syndrome cases not mention he used to work for Planned Parenthood? And I used hashtags pro-life and defund PP or defund Planned Parenthood. I did not use the hashtag fake news. And if I had, I don't think she would have paid attention to me. But she actually replied and said, I didn't know. Thanks for pointing that out. And she updated the article and reframed that around new information. So even little things like that, we can have an impact in what the media understands and knows. In their bubbles, they oftentimes do not know things like that. They don't even think about the conflict of interest that may be there. The other big thing with social media, think about what is impactful, what is on your news feed, and what you're seeing. It's creative videos and graphics that have greater impact. Study after study shows that video can be more impactful. More people are going to see those things. Graphics are so impactful. There's free tools like iMovie, Headliner, where you can make videos on different things. And I've got a screenshot here on the left of your screen where I called out CNN's Victor Blackwell, who had a segment on this back talking about building of the border wall, where they basically tried to ignore what actually had been done at the southern border. And so I did put together a video that got thousands of views based upon that. And he responded and, tried to lecture me about this and that. But the fact that he responded at all shows the impact, I think, of using good video. Here I'm zooming in. This is February, and I think February of 2019. And so it's just interesting to see how thin skin some of these people have as well and where they will respond. But it's important to do that. So how do we influence others online? Part of it is telling your story. So storytelling is a huge part of influencing individuals. Connecting them to your story, showing how you have something in common with them is a very impactful thing. You can do that online. Doing it in person is probably even better, but you want to do that. Candidates certainly should be telling their story to connect to the emotions, connect to the stories of the people that they're talking with. You also want to build community. So building a Facebook group, right? Facebook groups have been really promoted by Facebook. There are other organizing tools out there as well. And then find and use the right hashtags. In Wisconsin, WI Right is what we use. I helped co-create that back in 2011 during the height of the union protests and the recalls that came up in Wisconsin. We helped to get people organized on social media. So to summarize things, what we have to do now is, number one, pay attention to the electorate year and tone. We have to be engaged in the ground game, get involved, regardless of whether your election is 2020 or in 2022. You have to talk to real people and build strategic alliances. Use those alliances well. Think about the groups that can help you to be successful, and then engage in the battle online. If we do these things, we will be successful. There's no guarantee that you will be. You will be more successful than if you did not do these things. So we have to be using the opportunities that are out there. Conservatives, let's get organized. Let's get motivated. Let's make sure we make a difference this year. The challenges couldn't be greater here in 2020, and the challenges are going to continue to grow in 2021 and beyond. So we have to be better organized than we have been in the past. Get our people organized, get them out, put together the plan, motivate them, and we can be successful. So thank you guys so much. Any questions for anyone today? I've got my email up there as well. I can take any here in in Zoom, certainly, but then also you can send me an email, mattb@americanmajority.org, with any questions that you guys may have. I appreciate you all being here. I'm just going to check my screen for any Q&A. So seeing no questions, give you guys just a few more moments there, but thank you so much for tuning in.
Hey, Matt, it's Graham Laker from PLC.
Hey.
Hey, nice job. I know that we have a couple people here still, but I'll get you this recording from the event for this probably on Monday,
okay,
let's say, and then you guys can blast that out to your email subscribers. And I know that Scott will also get you a list of the people that signed up so that you guys can also follow up with them for the webinar and shoot them this as well.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Do you need anything else from me?
That's all. Thanks, Graham.
All right. I'm going to stop recording here. And unless Diane has any questions, feel free, Diane, to put them in the Q&A. But otherwise, I say we call this a victory, and, I'll send you the recording.
Sounds good. Thanks, Graham.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
And then you'll have to end the meeting there, Matt.
Okay. Well,
since you're the host. Perfect. All right. Bye-bye.